Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a Necron Cryptek. If you'd like to support the channel, our Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Now on to the video. So this is the Necron Cryptek that we're going to be working on in this video. He stood there on top of his little six-legged skateboard, although admittedly this one has 5 legs because one of them's been snapped off at some point during its many years in the drawer. So this is what we're going to be working for, and hopefully we'll get it looking good. The first colour that we're going to use is Citadel Black Templar Contrast. We're going to use this on all these sections that we are going to be doing black. So this is mainly like the joins between the battle plate and things like that. You can use any black you want. I like the Black Templar because it does quite a good job of covering up those surfaces and those areas without taking too much time to actually apply. The miniature itself has been sprayed with Runelord Brass prior to the video starting, so that gives it a nice base coat for the majority of the parts. Next up, we're going to use some Citadel Retributer armour. This is going to be to paint a few little sections on the miniature. You've got that kind of tabard down the front and the 2 kind of metallic ropes that go down with it, and also these kind of plates of cape at the back and the collar around his head too. So I want to give all these a nice coat of gold. If you don't like using the gold on your Necron miniatures, you can just leave them as Runelord Brass or Canoptec Alloy. Either of those two will do it if you're doing the more recent Dynasty. So now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Canoptec Alloy, and we are going to just paint on some of that on these armour plates on the hip, the head, the shoulders, just to give them a little bit of a difference in colour to the rest of the armour plates. Next up, we're just going to use a little bit of Citadel Moot green, and this is going to be to do the staff, the blade at the top and the blade at the bottom. So just those 2 blades with the Moot green. So now I'm going to use some Citadel Ahriman blue. I'm going to use this to do the little circular patterns on the little beard there. Then there's a circle on each shoulder too. Also going to use this to do the circles down that tabard at the front and alternate sections on these little tubes going out from the tabard too. Now we're going to use some Vallejo white. I'm just going to use this to do the sections we want glowing, so his eye, the eye on the little thing at the front, the name of which I can't recall, and also he's got that globe in the middle there too. The Kryptek has got one on his back and also on the staff, and a few other little globes in different places that we want to colour with the white, just so we can get that nice tesseract glow on there at a later point. Now we're going to use some Citadel Iron Hand Steel or Lead Belcher, whichever you've got. Either would work fine for this, and it's just going to be to do those little sections on the staff, a few little parts of the staff too, the legs on his little mate at the bottom there. I also use this to paint the little Necron parts on the base as well, and then rust them up as though they've been poking out of the ground for ages, and he's just sort of moving across them on the battlefield. Now I'm going to use some Citadel Runelord Brass. We're just going to use this to touch up any areas of the armour plates that we may have gone over with one of the other colours. You can see there I've also used a little bit of Ahriman blue to do the little bit of blackstone on his staff at the top there. So I'm using the Runelord Brass just to paint all of those panels for the normal armour plates. Let's get them one flat colour once more. Now we're going to start with the shades. We're going to start with BL Tan Green. You're just going to go over all of the Moot Green with these. You can also, if you want to, use these around the edges of those sections that you painted white. I will be using Apothecary White on this video, I believe. But you can use the BL Tan Green if you want to, and you don't have that Apothecary White contrast available. If you don't have it, I would recommend getting it because it's ideal for shading white, and it just makes painting white so much easier now. So now I'm going to use some Citadel Drakenhof Nightshade. I'm going to use this to paint the Blackstone on the staff, and also all of those little Ahriman blue discs and sections on the chain, because we're going to be painting those up like kind of jade jewels. Just give that nice golden jade that you see with the ancient Egyptian death masks and decorations. Next up, we're going to be using a little bit of Citadel Agrax Earthshade, and this is going to be to do all of the gold. So you just want to get this on every section that you've done gold, then we can move on to the next colour. Now we're going to use some Citadel Nuln Oil. This is going to be used on all of the sections that we painted with Iron Hand Steel. So give that a nice coat of that to dull that down and get all the shades in the recesses. And we can move on to the next shade. The next shade is Kryptek Armour Shade Gloss, which is a great colour. I'm going to use this to shade all of the Runelord Brass and Canoptec Alloy areas on his armour, so it's mainly all those armour plates with the black bits in between. So this time we're just going to use Tesseract Glow from Citadel without using Apothecary White first. I'm just going to try out something a little bit different with this. So whereas I usually apply it in one smooth layer, what I'm trying to do here is apply it slightly thick around the edges so you get that darker, deeper colour, and then sort of try and get that thinner near the centre so it looks a little bit lighter, just to see if you can do without those actual shades going onto the white areas first. So give them a coat of that, and we can move on to the next layer. The next one is going to be Citadel Runelord Brass, and we're going to go over each of the Runelord Brass armour plates now and apply these. Now when you apply the Kryptek Armour Shade Gloss, you're going to find that it goes quite blotchy in parts, which I think is absolutely superb. It gives it that rough, worn and weathered look without any effort. So we're just going to apply this back to those areas, leaving the shade in the recesses and also using those blotches as tarnished areas and leaving those on show too. So I'm kind of painting the Runelord Brass around those areas where you've got that blotchy shade. Now we're going to move on to Canoptec Alloy, and we are going to use this to do exactly what we've done with the Runelord Brass on the Canoptek parts, but we are also going to use this on the Runelord Brass areas to do the first highlight. So the bits that you painted originally with Canoptek Alloy, you're going to be using this as a first coat to colour it in, and you're going to be using it as the first highlight coat on all the Runelord Brass sections. Now we're going to mix some Vallejo Modeler Chrome with the Canoptec Alloy. I'm going to use this to highlight all the edges. And the great thing is when you add the Modeler Chrome to the Canoptec Alloy, it does give you a really shiny layer and colour that you can then use to edge highlight really well, and it does really bring out the shine in those areas where you apply it. So it's a really good highlight colour and does make a really good shine for any areas that you paint that on. Moving on to the gold now, we're going to apply this to the areas of gold that are catching the light. Doesn't matter too much really, but you do want to leave the undersides. Should have said this really with the Runelord Brass and that too. But if you can leave the shades in those areas that are underneath the legs, the arms, the chin, and all these parts, it just gives you that natural shade from the shade itself. Then you can reapply the gold, and that makes it look like the light is catching the gold a lot better. Makes it really shiny and stand out. It's one of the things that I really like about using metallic colours, is the kind of true metallic metal effect that you can get with them without too much effort. So now I'm going to use Citadel Liberator Gold to lighten those gold shades. So I'm trying to put this on the top edges of all the parts where we have the gold, so that it looks like the light is coming down from above and catching them, making them shine. The final colour of the gold is going to be Vallejo Modeler Chrome mixed with the Liberator Gold, and just like we did with the mix of this and the Canoptec Alloy, it will give a really light gold shade, and because it's got that much pigment in the Modeler Chrome, it gives a really nice edge highlight for all those gold areas and gets all those details to stand out. Especially looks good on the cape, which you'll probably see in the next part of the video and at the very end there, but it really does set off all those little details on the cape and on the face. Now you may not need to use this again, but I'm just going to put in a little bit for Citadel Black Templar contrast here, just because if you've gone over the Black Templar with any of the other colours while you've been painting it, you just use this to touch it up. Or if you do have any little streaks that you may get from the contrast, you can just use it here too. I'm now going to start working with the Ahriman blue on all the little gems and things. So what we're going to do is the circular gems, we're going to paint a crescent in the bottom left corner as always, and do a similar kind of effect on the little tubes on his tabard there too. You can also use this to edge highlight the piece of blackstone in his staff as well. We are now going to use a little bit of Vallejo white and mix that with the Ahriman blue. I'm going to do about 50% of the area that we've just put Ahriman blue in with this. So you're doing a smaller crescent within the crescent. Just doing about 50% of that area, and once you've done that, we can move on to the next shade. So we're now going to add a little bit more white to the previous mix just to lighten that up, and we're going to do a little about 50% of the previous layer with this once more. Slightly out of focus, apologies for that. So that you have that nice 3 different colours of Ahriman blue on the little circular parts, on those little tubes too. Because you have that shade on the other part, the Drachenhof Nightshade, that does give it the look that it's like a gem and the light's catching it. The final part for the gems, we're going to use some pure Vallejo white. We are just going to put a little spot in the top right corner of each of those gemstones and a really thin line in the bottom left of each of those gemstones too, just so that we can have that nice little look of light reflecting on them. Going to start working on those green blades now, so we're going to reapply some Moot green. What I'm going to try and do here is apply Moot green at the top of one section, then the bottom of another section, then the top of the next section, and just keep doing that so they're kind of on opposite sides. If you can do it sort of diagonally opposite as well, so it'd be like bottom right, top left, bottom right, top left as it works its way up. And then copy that onto the other side of the blade as well, so it's kind of like opposites. And what we'll do is we'll highlight those areas, get them lighter, and then we can use some shade to darken the areas that we haven't put that Moot green back on. So we're going to add a little bit of white to the Moot green now, and then we're just going to highlight about 50% of the areas that we've just painted that Moot green onto. Once more, we're going to add a little bit more white to the previous mix. We're just going to do highlights, highlighting about 50% of the previous layer on each of these sections. You'll start to see those shades and different shades of green coming out onto the blade now. Just going to add a little bit more Vallejo white to the previous mix for one final little highlight. So you're going to do about 50% of the previous layer on this, which is only going to be a really small highlight, to be honest. And then we'll use a little bit of shade to darken up some of the other green areas, and then use white to do all the edge highlights. So on the sections that we have just the Moot green and a little bit of BL tan shade on there, we're just going to add a little bit more BL tan shade to the opposite corners, to the lighter sections, and this will just give that dark to light transition a little bit more of an effect and make them stand out that little bit more. We're now going to use some pure Vallejo white. It's a little bit tedious this, but it's worth the effort, and this is going to be to go around each of the edges of the blades and each of the edges of those sections as well, so take your time doing this. Just use the sort of edge of the side of your brush to get them on. You can get a nice thin line doing that, rather than trying to use the point of the brush to get those details on there. We are also going to use this to paint the centre of all of those green Tesseract Glow globes, just so that we can give a nice brighter highlight to the centre of those too. I'm going to be using Tesseract Glow once more, and because we just put the white in the centre of all of those Tesseract Glow areas, we're just going to paint a thin layer on this, so you'll have that darker previous layer on the outside, and then a thin, kind of brighter, yellowier layer here. Also done the tubes with a little bit of Tesseract Glow as well to make them stand out. You can see that there makes the centre of the things really stand out, quite bright and glowing. So it's a nice way to get them to glow with little to no effort. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Iron Hand Steel and just reapply some of the metallic colour on the sections of the miniature where we've shaded that previously, just to get some of those details standing out. One of the final large sections to do is the black sections. So we're going to use Vallejo German Grey. It's a really dark grey. It's great for highlighting black without making the black too grey itself. And all you're going to do is use this to highlight all of the top surfaces of the black sections, the areas that will be catching light on those, just to make those sections stand out that little bit more, but without making them too light and bright. Now we're going to use Citadel Mechanicus Standard Grey, and this is going to be to simply do edge highlights on all of those black areas that you've just coloured. As always, I always try and keep the highlights on the top edge surfaces, the ones that will be catching the light. Only doing a few on the undersides where you might be able to see that on the model. And if you don't do one, it might just be one section all the same colour. So generally just doing the top edges of the black areas to highlight those. Final colour I'm going to use is Vallejo Model Air Chrome. I'm just going to use this to do all the little symbols on him. So he's got one on his chest there, one on either side of his staff. You can also use this if you wanted to do extreme highlights on the iron hand steel section as well, just to bring out some of those details on those parts. This is the finished Necron Cryptek. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. Some lovely little details that you can do on these ones. It's a great addition to the Dynasty. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much. If you like the channel and you enjoy the content and you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.